Two fair dice are rolled. Find the probability that the sum of the dice is 7, given that the sum is greater than 3. So there are two things going on here. The sum of the dice is 7. The sum is greater than 3. So we have event A and event B, two events. We'll be using that idea. Now notice this probability question has the word or the phrase given that. When you have given that in the probability question, you're working with what we call conditional probability. And you say, well, why does it matter? I know it's a conditional probability. Because that requires a formula. A formula looks like this. How does this formula read? The probability of A given B. This vertical bar translates into given that. Equals the probability of A intersection with B over the probability of B. And we're going to go ahead and let event A be the sum equals 7, and event B, sum is greater than 3. Now, before we start plugging numbers in here, let's become familiar with rolling a pair of dice. So we have two dice, die 1 and die 2, and we roll them. And these are all the possible ways they can be paired up. Maybe they fell as 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and so forth. There are 36 ways a pair of dice can fall. So this is what we call the sample space, our universe. All possible outcomes of rolling a pair of dice. Okay, now that we have all possible outcomes of rolling a pair of dice, let's go and look for the ones that fit the description for our problem. In our problem, we have two things. Those pairs that whose sum is equal to 7, and those pairs whose sum is greater than 3. So let's look for those two, the ones that fit those two descriptions. The ones that are in a box here, those are the ones that fit the description of being a sum equal to 7. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to need that number 6. There's 6 that fit that description. And how many fit the description that the sum is greater than 3? Well, all of these other than these two, these equal 3. So anything other than that would fit the description of having a sum greater than 3. Since there are 36, and we're not going to count these 3, the ones that fit the description would be 33 of them. We're going to use that number 2. So now let's go back to our formula. Here's our formula. Here's our A, and here's our B. And notice we plugged it in following the formula we had for conditional probability. So this is what it looks like. The probability of the sum equals 7, given the sum is greater than 3. One way of looking at this is, what's the probability that the sum equals 7, given that you looked at that group of dice that had a sum greater than 3? Well, here's the formula. So that would be the probability the sum equals 7, intersection sum greater than 3. This translates to an and, so you could read it as probability of the sum equals 7, and at the same time, it fits the description that sum is greater than 3. We're going to have a count for that. Then we're going to have a count for the bottom one, denominator. Probability of the sum is greater than 3. So notice what we're going to do. We're going to count how many fit the top description, put that number there. So how many out of the 36 fit this description? How many of the 36 pairs outcomes fit this description? Okay, so the top description, let's go for the top number. How many dice out of the 36 fit the description that the sum equals 7, and at the same time, the sum is greater than 3? So you go back to your table, all of these fit the description of the sum equals 7. These fit the description, the sum is greater than 3. How many of those are there that have both descriptions? Well, it would be these here. These, out of this group, which is a group that has a sum greater than 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, also fit the description that the sum is 7. So notice how many fit this description that the sum equals 7 and at the same time the sum is greater than 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the 6 goes here. Now let's look for the number that goes here. So how many dice out of the 36 fit the description that the sum is greater than 3? All of these fit the description the sum is greater than 3, which is 33 pairs. Just reduce, we always reduce, and you get a probability of 2 over 11. That's the probability that the sum equals 7 given the sum is greater than 3.